crabs don't have vaginas. Not technically, but if they did, they'd probably sound a lot like former Sony boss Chris Deering. Well, if crabs had vaginas and vaginas were also capable of speech, at least the crab ones. And you know what? I normally would feel compelled to apologise for having said something that was, let's be honest, complete and utter bollocks, but not this week. Not this week, because nothing I could say would be tantamount, would be comparable to the embarrassing bullshit that came out of Chris Deering's crab vagina. So, let's listen to an awful executive say some awfully executive things. Also, right, look, I've got a Gory Cuddly Carnage hoodie. Apparently, me really liking the game made the publisher quite happy about that. I don't know why. It's not like my words carry much weight anymore, but hey, it's alright, innit? Doesn't match the makeup job, but still gonna wear it anyway.
It really wasn't long ago that we looked at some overprivileged, labia-brained executive fuck-tunnel chatting utter bollocks about the obscene layoff epidemic that the tech sector has willfully triggered and continues to perpetuate. Now I know this show likes to bang a lot of the same drums, but I'd usually not dip back into that particular well of shit so soon. I must though, because the latest fecal dredging is too disgusting to let fester, and when I say disgusting, I really mean it. The words of former Sony Europe CEO Chris Deering are so offensive in their ignorance, so vicious in their callousness, so shockingly extreme in their thoughtlessness, they simply must be called out for what they are. Evil. What Chris Deering has said about the tens of thousands of people whose lives have been wrecked by layoffs his class of people have indulged in is, as far as I'm concerned, and without hyperbole, utterly fucking evil. He comes off like a bit of a twat.
I am ready to serve you, Master, and Satan.
They say, do not attribute to malice what you can to stupidity, and make no mistake, Chris Deering is stupid. He's a deeply stupid cunt. However, stupidity and malice aren't mutually exclusive things, and Chris Deering is, like everybody who's ever occupied the industry's upper echelons, a deeply stupid, malicious cunt. Now, if you don't know what he said and wonder if I may be being too harsh, well, let me give you a preview of what he thinks. He believes those who are laid off should just stop feeling sad about their livelihoods being taken away and just hang out on the beach for a year. Because from his point of view, the layoffs aren't really all that big a deal. In his mind, layoffs are a lot like COVID, and when he says that, he doesn't mean both situations are shit. He literally thinks both of them aren't that big a deal. So yeah, just hang out on a beach for a year. That's something this loaded load of loads believes everyone can just do. He also shows much more sympathy for the executives who chose to lay off so many people rather than take a fractional pay cut they're too rich to miss. Because let's never forget, it's the executives who are the real victims, not their, victims. Now let's get into it, and seriously gang, brace yourselves. This scrotal clown only gets more shocking the longer he opens the anus below his nose. I don't think it's fair to say that the resulting layoffs have been greed, said Deering, already sounding like a moronic fantasist. I always tried to minimise the speed with which we added staff because I always knew there would be a cycle and I didn't want to end up having the same problems that Sony did in electronics.
Only the clown is impressed. The audience sees through everything that's happening.
What he's essentially saying here is that executives aren't greedy, they are instead stupid and, well, Considering he's one of them, it's hard not to agree with that. I mean, we just called him stupid earlier. But this is another situation where stupidity isn't a mutually exclusive state. Executives are very short-sighted, terminally incompetent, impulsive babies who never learn their lesson, and they absolutely have a cycle of hiring loads of people, then jettisoning them later. But that's business, baby, and that's how it's designed to work. As we've discussed on past shows, there's a reason layoffs typically happen in time for the latest financial report to investors. Say it with me, it's to perpetuate the big lie of perpetual growth. Companies need to tell those investors that they made more money than last time, and they're expected to do that every single time forever. If they make less, or even if they make the same amount and maintain a steady business, shareholders immediately act like the ship is sinking. So to keep that from happening, companies cut costs to keep the money looking good and inflated, and that is all these bastards see the human beings they employ as just another cost. Let's not forget that Microsoft's justification for layoffs earlier in the year was that the company needed to grow, not stay the same, not stay as massively successful as it already is. We need to grow. It's all about just more. Meanwhile, the executives who keep making the decisions Deering basically admits are short-sighted mistakes continue to pay themselves millions of dollars a year, never once considering that perhaps they're the ones costing the company a massive amount of money, rather than the people whose work brought in all the money to begin with, all to please an obscenely wealthy group of shareholders who get upset if their already vast wealth isn't literally growing forever. You know what that sounds like to me? It sounds an awful lot like greed. Don't worry though, he's gone and blamed all of you as well. If the money isn't coming in from the consumers on the last game, it's going to be hard to justify spending the money for the next game. Yeah, that's right, you bloody monsters didn't buy Concord, so Sony's recent layoffs really are your fault, aren't they?
You're still mad at me?
Fuck off, Deering, you toad in a tie. How actually dare you? I'm sick to death of executives refusing to take responsibility for their own shit. They certainly give themselves performance bonuses when the games made by other people perform well. But when a big fuck-up occurs, a big fuck-up that's usually caused by fucked-up leadership, they always blame something else and pass the consequences of their own behaviour onto others. What's worse, we've only this year seen studios make successful games and still get closed down, so let's stop with the dishonest claims that layoffs are all about sales. Layoffs happen regardless of success, and sometimes, to keep the growth myth going, layoffs will happen because of success. Bellend. Now I realise the arguments I've just used will be ones that my regular viewers would have heard me bring out on more than one occasion, but that's part of the point. I've got this shit down to a science now, but the fact arguing against this man's crap is so easy makes me actively angry. Like, it makes me angrier that dismantling his bullshit is easier than having a wank. You could say both come naturally. It pisses me off because it just goes to show how unbothered by the truth men like him are. They've never had to answer the things I bring up. They've been able to spout the same propaganda for years, unchallenged by those in a position to challenge. And it's always the same litany of excuses and lies. They've never had to evolve or refine or change a damn thing about their bullshit. They just get to ignore those who are wise to the game. Interviewers never cut them off. They just give executives a platform to repeat the lies over and over. Speaking of which, here comes Deering with more unforgivably unchallenged crap. I think it's probably very painful for the managers, but I don't think that having skill in this area is going to be a lifetime of poverty or limitation. It's still where the action is, and it's like the pandemic, but now you're going to have to take a few. Figure out how to get through it, drive an Uber or whatever. Go off to find a cheap place to live and go to the beach for a year. But keep up with your news and keep up with it, because once you get off the train, it's much harder. What? Oh, there it is. one of the most staggeringly insulting statements I've ever witnessed pouring out of the rotting brain of an industry leader, and this is an industry where abusive, psychologically and physically damage overworking was labelled
Bioware magic!
This cunt. We can leave the skeleton warriors out of it right now. This cunt who quote-unquote works jobs that pay millions has the absolute shitting temerity, the bold bollocksed fanny-flapping gall to lecture others on how to cope with losing their income while telling them to find a cheap place to live. People losing their jobs and the COVID epidemic do have one thing in common. The greed-fueled executive class made both situations worse to serve themselves. But of course that's not what Deering means. What Deering means is, well, it's just, his sentiment is just plain fucked up. And I wish that were the most offensive part, I really do, but sadly that's just par for the course when it comes to overpaid sentient rectums like him, so privileged as to be out of touch with real problems, so entitled as to dispense their useless answers to said problems anyway.
I don't have to put up with this. I'm rich.
Useless is the word too. As I've been saying recently, it's fucking ironic that men like him get to decide who's redundant when the executive class is one of the least needed things any society could burden itself with. And I say that as someone who makes fucking YouTube videos. I guarantee you I've done more societal good than him. I've certainly cracked a lot of eggs. Right now, Deering's just cracking what's left of my fucking sanity. But yeah, as well as his stunningly fucked up COVID comparisons, he really thinks that everyone in the game industry can just afford to wait it out. Wait it out until what? The cycle of mass hiring and firing that he said was a bad thing just begins anew? Do we wait until companies stop doing everything they can to replace jobs permanently with shit like AI because they hate paying people? Do we wait until the game industry magically stops being such an unsustainable wreck that literally gets harder to survive in every fucking year? Wait until what, Chris? Wait until what? Because I've been doing this shit for a long time, you mewling ball of matted dog fur, and let me tell you, it is not getting better, and if you knew anything about the industry, which people in your pay bracket don't, you'd know this shit is not getting better. It has never gotten better, and it's your fault. It's not the consumers who didn't buy enough games. It's the fault of assholes like you. What people like Chris Deering don't understand is that unlike him, real people can't just invent positions of power for themselves and their rich mates. What this flesh diaper can't comprehend is that unlike him, there are no golden parachutes for those who lost their jobs. Sorry, let me rephrase that. There are no golden parachutes for those whose jobs were taken. Their severance packages are a sliver of a fraction what a man like Deering gets when he leaves a position he failed upwards into and literally cashes out. If you can think someone who has to do real work to survive can just hang out on the beach for a year until it all blows over, you are so far removed from people, so unable to relate to them, that you're practically detached from reality, at least the reality 99% of the world lives in. If you believe you can make up the shortfall of losing a full-time career by taking a little job driving for Uber, you literally don't comprehend the value of money anymore, which is a symptom of having access to so much of it that it's become meaningless. It is, to you specifically, no object. This is a man who ran Sony Europe. This is what the people in positions of lucrative authority think and say. He's not been the only one to spout such garbage either. He's just spouted it the most offensively, and I have to ask, how on God's green earth are they qualified for their positions? Like, on a practical level, I don't care about whatever degrees they have. I want to know what knowledge they possess, what skills they've demonstrated that make them uniquely suited to be industry leaders. Deering has shown that he can't relate to employees. He doesn't realise the impact of layoffs. He doesn't even understand what money is, unable to grasp its value to such an extreme degree that he thinks Uber pays its drivers enough for a 12-month seaside holiday. Like, holy fuck. That men like him are at the wheel of this business is terrifying. It's legitimately terrifying. A theme running through my work lately is that those least qualified to run the video game industry are the ones currently running it into the ground. Everything game execs have said and done over the years only backs that up. It's hardly any wonder publishers do really stupid shit and constantly repeat history when they're this isolated from a real world where consequences exist. A world where people have actual problems and money means something. No wonder they all jumped on the live service bandwagon despite how blatantly unsustainable it was to flood the market with that many high player investment games. They don't understand consequences. They think anyone can just hang out on a beach with all the time in the world. It's no wonder they embraced the obvious grift of NFTs and they were left holding the bag when they couldn't pass the scam down the pyramid to us. They're so fucking blinkered, so obsessed with short-term gains and too fucking dumb to consider the long-term impact of their get-rich-quick schemes. It's no wonder they give developers unreasonable deadlines and have unrealistic expectations of success, because reason and reality are completely fucking alien to them. It's no wonder that everybody repeats that famous Yahtzee phrase, or let's all laugh at an industry that never learns anything.
LOL.
Because the industry is run by fucking chimpanzees in business suits. And as soon as that came out of my mouth, I felt compelled to apologise to chimps everywhere. A chimp can sit there flicking its own shit up the walls, but at least it won't say anything embarrassing. We all agree that this is an industry that never learns anything, and Chris Deering's words demonstrate exactly why. Executives are thick. It truly is that simple. These overpaid, underqualified, thoroughly detached morons are just too thick to learn a damn thing. I repeat that this is terrifying. A billion-dollar industry is being run by people so detached and thick they don't even know what money is, and tens of thousands of livelihoods are attached to the impulsive, clueless, flailing decisions of these cruel, heartless, evil fucking cretins. It is terrifying.
Chris Deering, total pillock. Now, obviously I had many requests to do this one this week, and by many I mean I saw at least one, so I hope that was edifying. I did very legitimately lose my rag during the recording of that. And I have a policy to not get too angry, too emotional when I perform in front of a camera, but I truly did get fucking furious talking about Chris Deering. You know, I'm always angry when I talk about executives, but there was something about just what was said and the sheer arrogant ignorance of it that drove me up the fucking wall. And unfortunately, like I said, this is how these people think. This is what they say, maybe not so overtly as Chris, but we've seen from their statements, from their attitudes, from their actions, just how callous, awful, and fucking inept they are. And yes, it is scary, but yes, you can thank God for me. It's got that new hoodie smell and everything.